Chapter one of your book introduces you to the subfield of lifespan development. This subfield of psychology is referred to either as developmental psychology or lifespan development. Um, what we will examine in this is a field that is interested in examining growth, change, and stability in behavior throughout one lifespan. And we know these three general areas: physical development, cognitive development, emotional and social development, all affect our overall behavior. And they change as we age. So, whenever we talk about a span of development, let's say infancy, toddlerhood, we begin with looking at physical development. Quite recently, there's been a lot of studies on brain development, so that when we look at the different lifespan areas, we'll begin with physical development and looking at overall development, including brain development. Cognitive development is how our intellectual abilities, attention, memory, problem solving, creativity, all of those, and language change as we age. And then the last area, and probably the most important area for psychology, is that emotional social development, which looks at our understanding of ourselves, how do we relate to others, relationships, friendships, moral reasoning, and other components of social emotional development. So lifespan has divided up into different age spans. If you had taken this class 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we would have started the class with infancy. The belief was that once you're born, that's when your personality and behavior should be studied. Well, today we know whatever happens prenatally, in utero, even genetics and heredity, can affect one's overall development. So in this class, we begin with prenatal development. If the pregnant woman, I should say, has drank during her pregnancy, alcohol we know affects physical development, cognitive development, and social emotional development for all of the age spans. So again, prenatal development, important area of development, and then the span of time that is studied will divide up into infancy, toddlerhood, then we go into early, middle childhood, adolescence, and early adulthood, which you can see the span is pretty large from 18 to 40, has been divided up into emerging adulthood and early adulthood. So emerging adulthood is from 18 to about 25, when the young person is still getting a better understanding of who they are and establishing their independence. And then we'll go into early adulthood, which is from 25 to about 40, and then all the way to late adulthood, and we'll end with death and dying. Not the happiest subject, but unfortunately, for lifespan is an important one. So what influences our overall development? The cohort one is born in. The time frame of their growth will absolutely affect their overall development. So for example, those who were born during the time internet was just starting, the impact of internet, cell phones, all of those will affect one's overall development. So cohort is an important one. Culture is also an important one. And as we go into the class, we'll talk about this more. One of the most important aspects of culture is whether one grows up in an individualistic culture versus collectivist culture. Individualistic culture emphasizes individual rights over the rights of the group. United States is an individualistic culture where it's emphasized to the child to explore their individuality and give emphasis and importance to their overall individual needs, versus a collectivist culture like Japanese or East Asian culture, where the emphasis is on the collective, on the group, so that the individual learns that their existence is important within a group setting. Both have their drawbacks and benefits and drawbacks. We'll look at those, but you can imagine how this emphasis on the individual versus the group will affect the child's overall sense of who they are and their belonging in the world. Next one is social class, more commonly referred to as socioeconomic status or SES. You are going to see this abbreviation SES over and over again. This refers to one income, education, their overall standing in occupation in society. So SES has a huge impact on one's overall development, and again, we'll look at this. And then you have, unfortunately, this non-normative life events. So we're going through one now, pandemic with COVID-19. You can imagine a 2-year-old, their overall development might be affected differently than an adolescent that is going through this crisis. So these are some of the influence of our overall development that has to be taken into consideration when we're looking at development. Some of the key issues in our overall development is development continuous or discontinuous? Meaning, do we just continue to develop as we go along, or does it happen in stages? You will meet a theorist, Jean Piaget, that believed our development is in stages. And we'll look at the stages. So you have to graduate from one to move on to the next. The field is also looking at whether there are critical and sensitive periods to some of our developmental skills. For example, we know vision has a sensitive and critical period, really. If the child is born, let's say, with a cataract or something is obstructing their visual stimuli in the first 6 months of life, their overall, even though the eye is perfectly fine and the brain is fine, meaning you remove the cataract, let's say at 8 months, their subsequent vision will be affected. So, and they've done this on kittens where they have put kittens in a dark room for a specific amount of time, and they have taken the kittens out and the kittens were blind for the rest of their life. Same thing with language. You're going to meet a young female who was deprived of learning a first language for the first 11 years of her life. And the question is, was she able to learn language later on in her life? We'll take a look at that. And then one of the other issues is taking a life approach or focusing on particular periods of one's life when we look at social, emotional, cognitive, and physical development. So we'll look at those. The last area, and there's a video, the Gym Twins, which is embedded, I can't show it here, but please take a look at it, is embedded in your module. The overall question of nature versus nurture. Nature refers to your genetic, biological, inherited tendencies. So those who are on the nature side, for example, would believe someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer, was born with those tendencies, that it was in his biology, in his genetics to become a sociopath. Those who take the nurture side believe that you are who you are due to your environmental factors, such as parents, culture, community. So if someone that is 100% nurture would try to explain why someone like Jeffrey Dahmer was brought about, they would say that it was due to his environment or his parental or community. So take a look at this. This question of nature versus nurture has been questioned by developmental psychologists forever and ever. And I think we are at 50-50. We know you are born with certain genetic predispositions and your environment will either heighten or decrease these genetic predispositions. Not 100% answered, but that's where we are today. So anytime we have a theory or some kind of idea about development, we need to do research in order to find out whether our ideas are correct or online. So whenever there's a research, we have to follow the scientific method. The first step is to identify question of interest, what causes depression. Then one will formulate an explanation. Most explanations are made by looking at previous theories or one's observation, where you come up with an explanation or a hypothesis, and then a research design is created to recruit subjects and test and see whether your hypothesis was correct. Did your data support your explanation or refute it? In lifespan, you have your overall descriptive methods that are used, which are observation. You can do laboratory or naturalistic observation. Your book does a really good job of explaining what these descriptive methods are and benefits and drawback from each one. So you have naturalistic or laboratory observations. You have case studies where the researcher will look at a few cases and look in depth into these cases. You have interviews. Surveys are fantastic ways to get people's opinions or reported behavior, beliefs. And then you have content analysis. Correlational research is another form of research done for lifespan development. In correlational research is usually variables that have already happened, and the person wants to go back and look at the strength and direction of the relationship between these variables. So if you're interested in, let's say, the relationship between smoking and subsequently developing lung cancer, we can do an experimental research, which would be where one, in experimental research, you are manipulating your variables. Some of the research that is done in psychology, you are not able to manipulate these variables. You can't assign a group to smoke, let's say, a pack of cigarettes, and then in 15 years see if they develop lung cancer. That would be unethical. Or another one for developmental psychologists that they're interested in, the relationship between physical abuse and subsequently developing aggressive behavior. Well, we can't put children in an aggressive situation, in a physically abusive homes, and see if they develop those aggressive tendencies. But what is done are correlational research. Correlational research, the variables have already occurred, the phenomenon has already happened. You're going back and asking for strength of relationship. So children who have grown up in physically abusive homes, you go and find out and assess their aggressive tendencies. And you say there is a relationship between. Whenever you're looking at correlational research, you're given a number. In the results section, they will give you what's called correlational coefficient, which is the number. The number itself will speak to this strength of relationship. The plus or minus will give you the direction of the relationship. So a plus sign in terms of direction will tell you as one variable increases, the other variable also increases. So in let me draw this for you. In a plus, let's say +1, as the child's aggression, let's say they experience more aggression, they tend to be more aggressive. So as they experience more physical abuse, their tendency to be aggressive is more. This is a plus relationship. In a negative direction, this says as one variable increases, the other one is decreasing. So let's say you're looking at the relationship between cups of vegetable and cholesterol. The more cups of vegetable you have, the less your cholesterol will be. So your two variables are traveling in opposite direction. That would be the plus and minus. The number itself will give you the strength of relationship. Are they related? Are they strongly related, or are they not related at all? The closer you are to a zero, that means your variables are not related at all. The closer you get to one, the closer the relationship between the two. As one is affected, the other one is also strongly affected. And it is important to note that in correlational research, you cannot talk about causality. You can't say one causes the other. You can only say there's a strong relationship between them. In experimental research, however, because you're manipulating your variables, you can say cause and effect relationship. One causes the other to occur. And again, your book does a really good job of explaining both. Please pay attention to independent and dependent variable. In developmental research designs, however, we use these three common research designs are used. And they're really speaking to the subjects that are used in these three different designs. In a longitudinal, and you'll see in your reading in probably chapter 3 or 4, there is a longitudinal, there's a famous longitudinal research that was done called Thomas and Chess, New York Temperament Longitudinal Research. In this design, the two researchers used the same subjects and they studied them at different times in their life. So they took a group of infants, they looked at their temperament specifically when they were infants, they brought the same group back when they were 2 and they looked at their temperament on and on. So in a longitudinal study, it's the same subjects over a long span of time, be it 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, whatever it is. In cross-sectional design, you're using different groups, but you're looking at them at the same time. So if you were to do a temperamental study, you would bring one group of, let's say, infants, look at their temperament. The next day you would bring, let's say, 1-year-old and look at their temperament. The next day you would bring a group of 4-year-olds so that your subject groups are different, but you're looking at the same time frame for them. And in sequential is comparing both cross-sectional and longitudinal studies and looking at overall development. So this is really for chapter 1. Take a look, read the chapter, and if there are any questions, please feel free to email.